Alrighty, boys and girls, well, today is a very important day for the 79 280ZX. Today we're going to be installing the first set of upgrades on this car. If you know anything about old Nissan L series engines, is that their EFI models are very choked and very neutered, so to say, from the factory, mainly with the air intake system. Now, it is a factory cold air intake system, so it can take all of the air that it needs. However, it can't, because the stock intake manifolds are brutally restrictive on these cars. Each intake manifold runner, which is each individual tube that goes into the cylinder, is only 53% of the size of the intake valve. So basically what that translates to is the engine is only taking in about half as much air as that it physically can, as that it can physically draw in with the size of the valves and obviously the cylinder capacity, 2.8 liters. It's a similar story with the exhaust system, though not as bad. It's a 2.8 liter engine, and these earlier 280ZXs and just EFI L28s in general only come with a 1 7/8 inch exhaust system. Now, for the size of this engine, that's pretty small, and yes, it is restrictive. So of course, the solution with the exhaust is relatively simple. I'm putting a set of 3 to 2 headers on it with a collector that goes down into 2.5 inches all the way to the back. So we're significantly enlarging the exhaust system by close to an inch. So that's pretty much what you need for these cars. 2.5 inch exhaust, that's all you need, turbo or not. That'll open her up real well. However, the other catch is the intake manifold. Now, obviously, you guys know I'm in California, so I can't go on Lone Wolf Performance and buy just a straight up log manifold with a throttle body and one fitting for the brake booster. For visual inspection, I need to keep my emission controls on here. So my EGR, my BBT, my charcoal canister, so on and so forth. PCV system, you name it. That all has to stay on this engine, I'm afraid. So, what I will be doing, it's a similar thing that I did with my other 280ZX. I am taking the intake manifold off to a machine shop and I'm getting it fully ported. What they're going to do is they're going to actually cut the whole front of the intake manifold off, and they're going to port all the way through the runners from 30 millimeters to 34.5 millimeters, which is the size of the ports on the cylinder head. Still a bit restrictive, as I said. The valves are still much bigger than that, but the head porting is a whole other thing. And unless I'm running a fat ass cam, I'm not going to need head porting. I just want this engine to breathe as much as it can with the factory hardware that it has. Now, it's going to be raining on and off all week long, so I'm going to need a nice dry place to do all this. But luckily, I've recently built my own Ted Kaczynski shack, and I'll be able to pull the car in and do the work inside nice and dry and nice and controlled without getting anything wet and rusty. Alright, so now that we're all inside and cozy, we can begin the first steps. The first things we got to do is remove all of the vacuum hoses that are not connected to the engine itself. So things like the booster, throttle body, PCV, some coolant hoses as well for the idle air control. Those have to be disconnected. We've got to drain some coolant. Everything with the fuel rail, injection hoses, all that sort of stuff we have to disconnect and remove from the manifold before we can really dig in and start loosening stuff up. So let's go ahead and start with that. Alright, so I have gotten most of the auxiliary accessories off of the intake manifold. As you can see, it looks a lot different now, a lot less stuff. I did have to drain about half the coolant because I forgot on these early models there's a metal tube that goes around and that protrudes onto the intake manifold for the idle air control valve. On the later ones, it just connects right to the throttle body. So I did have to do that, but that's no big deal. That EGR tube down there has always been a bitch, almost on every single car I have done this on. I've got this heat shield off that was sitting on the bottom of the manifold with like 12 friggin' 12 millimeter bolts, which is totally overkill for just a thin piece of metal that's spaced 1 inch away from the manifold. So it's not like it's going to vibrate on anything, but they put 12 damn bolts in it to secure it, and amazingly only one of those snapped. So I had full access to the EGR tube. However, the inevitable happened. Had my massive 7.5 pound 18-inch stainless steel wrench twisting that nut started moving, but it turns out the nut is only moving because the nut is seized onto the tube, and it sheared the damn tube right off the exhaust port. So that is a damn shame. Alright, this is the moment we've been waiting for. Intake manifold is coming out. All the bolts are loose. Amazingly, none of the exhaust bolts broke off inside the head that share with the manifold. At least I haven't done the corners. But yeah, just with a little bit of maneuvering with the throttle cable and the fuel rail, she should be coming right out. So let's pull it. Holy shit. Tools and things. Oh, there we go. Get this out here. This is definitely not going back on. I mean, look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 freaking bolts that holds this silly, stupid thing on. Cold start valve, there we go. Jesus, look at all this freaking gunk. Oh, all this oily, sticky crap inside that intake. Jesus. Well, yep. I don't know which. I think these gray, these kind of tan color injectors, like this one right here. I don't know if you can see that. I believe this color here is the original. So it looks like we have 3 original injectors and 3 that have been replaced. And the hoses on the original ones look pretty cracked, so good thing that's being taken care of. Oh, there goes some gas. Okay. Extra fragrance. Okay, so I've got the fuel rail completely stripped down. I've got the old injectors off. I didn't really want to cut them. I tried to cut them right in the middle and then peel the rest off because it's very important, ask me how I know, that if you, this is soft metal by the way, I think it's brass or something, if you take your razor and you cut the flare of the barb here, it'll leave a mark and you will get fuel leak. I have a set of OEM remanufactured stock NA 186cc fuel injectors from my 82 before it was mega squirted. So I'll be using these bad boys here. They're in perfect shape, even though they're a bit rusty. They've been sitting around for 2 or 3 years. I've only got, you know, probably, I don't know, 15,000 miles on these. So they're perfectly good. The car ran excellent. So these will be swapped in. So at this point, with the fuel injection, all there's left to do is get the manifold back and put everything back on it. So in the meantime, let's focus on the exhaust. So these are the headers that I'm going to be using. It's just the regular MSA 3-into-2 headers with the smog fittings. I have the O2 sensor blocked off because my 79 does not have an O2 sensor, but it's got the one for the EGR on the side. Just got to get another tube. So, however, I did one thing differently. I got this custom coated in the same color. I bought the non-coated version from MSA, and I went to a powder coater and he put a high temp coating on it. I didn't go with the MSA high temp coating because it flakes off after a year, and what's the extra 90 bucks if it's going to last you only a year? So I got it professionally done. So you can see the kind of wrinkle on there. It is in fact powder coated. And the only thing I have to do is I forgot to tell him not to paint the flange, so I got to sand down the flange just so it gets a good solid fit on the gasket to the head. But other than that, these will certainly suffice. So now, as far as the stock exhaust goes on the engine, I was able to get the bolts loose where the downpipe connects to the catalytic converter. However, the downpipe, or should I say Y-pipe to manifold bolts, are totally frickin' stuck. None of them are budging, and they're very hard to get to from the bottom as it is, just because of the lack of space. I've used my impact and I've wailed on it for a solid 10 seconds after blasting it with PB and a little bit of heat. Nothing. Used my 18-inch breaker bar with a pipe on the end with a long extension. I only have a 3/8 long extension like this, and it was twisting, and it's kind of warped. So basically, with what I have around here, those damn bolts aren't coming off. So basically what I got to do is I just got to get a frickin' saw in here, and I got to cut the damn pipe off. I mean, I already have a spare one of these anyway, so I don't need another. And that seems like it's the only way I'm going to get this damn manifold off. So it's time to cut it. And after a good amount of violence and destruction, the Y pipe is off. And now we can go ahead and remove the original exhaust manifold. Oh yeah, she's heavy. Oh, damn. Manifold is back from the machine shop. It's now fully ported all the way through to the start of the runners. And of course the plenum is ported all the way to 60 millimeters. What they did is they cut all along down here, all almost to the EGR valve, then up and along the side here, and ported it out and welded it back up. Okay, so all of the manifold bolts are in and tightened down. That includes all the bolts on the top and in between. Alright, we got all the manifold accessories on except for the EGR, and basically now I'm going to move on to the wiring harness, hook everything back up, then give all the hoses a good tighten down and make sure they're all secured, put coolant back in it, fire it up, and see what we got. There we go. Not sure how well you're gonna be able to hear me because this thing is absolutely loud as hell. But it's all warmed up, everything looks good. Had to fix a little bit of a vacuum leak at the throttle body. Now it's pretty much running perfect. No leaks, no nothing. So now I think it's time we take her for a spin, make sure everything is good before I put the rest of the exhaust system on. Okay, it is still very loud. Fire extinguisher, because you got to have one in these cars. Now let's see how many people we can piss off. Okay, this thing is absolutely ear-piercing, like holy shit. All right, out here in the old merge, got to put some gas in this thing for sure, so we're gonna head to the gas station and see what we got. It's idling a little high. I think I'm gonna have to adjust that screw again, but it's running fine. Feels good. Alright, let's get some gas in this thing and make sure nothing's on fire. Well, no sign of leaks. Definitely some smoke from the excess paint burning off the headers, but looking good so far. She fucking sends all right. Bada bing, bada bang. All right, now I can put the rest of the exhaust system on now that I know everything works. So I've got the aftermarket Y pipe here. I actually adapted the factory mounting bracket, which mounts up to the transmission, onto this pipe. I had to do a little bit of stretching on it to get to fit over the slightly larger diameter. By the way, I was mistaken. This is not a 2.5 inch pipe like MSA believes or leads you to believe. It's a 2 1/4 inch pipe. For some reason they just decide to give you a 2.5 inch test pipe with it if you choose to do so. But yeah, it is not 2.5, it is 2 1/4. And obviously this slips on to the collectors on the header. I got her nice and lathered up with some bearing grease so she'll slide on better. And then I'll be finishing it off with a just one exhaust clamp. I'm not going to be tack welding this on because I'd like to have it be able to disassemble in pieces and not have to take everything out at once, because that would be a bitch. And then under the engine here, as I mentioned earlier, there was a little tab that came off of this bracket for the oil pan. I took this bracket off of the oil pan, which was kind of a bitch. That last bolt was very hard to reach. And then I just hacked off that tab on the end there so it doesn't rub against the header. Like I said, I have no idea what the purpose of that is. It's very strange. But now we will not be having any contact with the header, and it'll be very nice. Okay, so I have the entire exhaust system attached. Let's have a look. So we'll start from the top here. I've got the Y pipe fully matched with the headers, and I've got one little 2 1/4 inch clamp on there just to keep things secure. Follow it down. I've got the stock exhaust bracket for the Y pipe hooked up to the mount on the transmission. That hooked up fine. And now things get a little weird down here. So obviously, based on what was said on the MSA website, I thought this was going to be a 2.5 inch down pipe. Turned out to be 2 1/4. So of course, I got a set of 2.5 inch flanges. You can see there's a gap here. That's because the flange is too big for the 2 1/4 inch Y pipe. So we got a nice, healthy exhaust leak coming out of there. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to, well, I'm going to have to get different flanges and a different pipe. This whole test pipe thing is not going to fly. Maybe I'll use it on my turbo instead. Who knows? Yeah, so I got it bolted up to the stock exhaust here. That bolted up fine, kind of, sort of. Obviously, it kind of overlaps. You can see there's a protrusion of 2.5 inches that meets up with the 1 7/8 inch port. There's a protrusion from the stock catback as well, so it kind of fits over each other. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a pretty healthy leak for sure. It's definitely going to be a little raspy because of that, but whatever. I mean, the important thing is this thing is installed and it is not going anywhere. So now we can back this thing on out, and well, the next thing I'll do is get a catback exhaust after I sort out this whole deal here.